The rescue. Corvin Drake's ship, the Star Nomad, floated silently near the ruins of Sanctuary Station 47. The hull was torn apart, panels ripped away as if some giant hand had shredded the place. Corvin's boots clanged against the airlock as he pulled himself toward the breach, cutting torch in hand. The alarm on his wrist buzzed softly, a faint life sign somewhere inside the wreckage. He paused, listening. The recycled air hissed through his helmet, carrying the faint smell of burnt metal and old ozone. Corvin's heart thumped, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had seen a lot in his years salvaging derelict ships, but the emptiness here felt different. Cold, deliberate. Bodies drifted past him. Crew members, civilians, all frozen in their last moments. Some were still strapped into their stations, helmets cracked, faces pale. Corvin swallowed hard. He'd seen deaths in battle, yes, but these weren't soldiers. These were ordinary people, victims of murder. Someone had destroyed the station on purpose. Corvin followed the scanner's faint beep deeper into the wreck. Red emergency lights flickered, casting long shadows across twisted metal corridors. The sound of debris shifting in zero gravity echoed eerily. And then, at a sealed bulkhead in what looked like a residential area, the scanner's beep grew louder. He activated the cutting torch. The metal peeled back in glowing strips, and Corvin's helmet lamp lit the inside. Two golden eyes blinked at him from the shadows. He stumbled back, his hand dropping to his plasma pistol. The eyes didn't move. They were small but sharp, watching him carefully. Corvin forced his breathing steady. "Easy," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you." The figure in the corner stirred. A child. Not a human child, though. Fur the color of burnt rust covered her arms and legs, and sharp, pointed ears lay flat against her head. Scaled patches ran along her shoulders, and her hands ended in retractable claws. Corvin noticed her shallow breathing and the dried blood on her side. Despite the injuries, her eyes stayed locked on him, intelligent and alert. He lowered his torch slightly. "I'm Corvin. I have a ship. You're safe with me." The child's ears twitched, scenting him. Some species, Corvin reminded himself, communicated through smell as much as words. He held still, letting her read his intentions. Slowly, she moved. Her claws scraped against metal as she approached, limping slightly from the injury. Corvin held out his arm, letting her cling to him. She was fragile, but there was a quiet strength in her gaze. He felt a pang of protectiveness. This child, whatever she was, depended entirely on him. "Stay with me," he said. "I won't let anyone hurt you." They moved quickly through the corridors. Corvin carried her part of the way, careful not to worsen her injuries. Finally, they reached the docking bay. The Star Nomad waited, old and battered, but capable. Corvin sealed them inside and engaged the engines. The ship shuddered as it released from the station. The child climbed into the co-pilot seat, staring wide-eyed at the controls. Corvin pointed at the harness. "Buckle in." She blinked, uncertain. He reached over, helping her strap in. She flinched at his touch, claws brushing against his sleeve. He smiled faintly. Trust would take time. The scanner beeped urgently. Military-grade ships were closing in, 3 of them. Corvin cursed under his breath. 15 minutes. That was all the time they had. "Ready?" he asked the child. Her ears flattened, signaling both fear and understanding. She didn't speak, but her movements said it all. She was ready to run, and she trusted him to lead the way. Corvin pushed the throttle forward, weaving through the debris field. The Star Nomad wasn't fast, but he knew every twist and gap in the floating wreckage. The pursuing ships were careful, unwilling to risk collisions. Corvin's hands shook slightly on the controls, but he kept his mind sharp. Every scrap of metal became an ally, every shadow a hiding spot. Behind them, one ship broke off. The other 2 pressed on, scanners sweeping the area. Corvin ducked, pulling the Nomad through a tight opening. The child gripped the armrests, silent but tense. Corvin's heart raced. If he miscalculated, they wouldn't survive. An explosion rocked the port side. The Nomad lurched, alarms blaring. Corvin swore, checking the sensors. A small device pulsed on the hull, quantum entangled, impossible to remove. A tracker. Every ship in the sector would know their location soon. He looked at the child. She stared back, golden eyes wide and intelligent. She understood the danger. He activated the jump drive. The stars stretched into lines. Lyria, or at least that's the name he had begun to use for her, slumped in her seat, exhausted. Corvin took a deep breath, scanning the medical readings. Broken ribs, contusions, minor radiation exposure, but nothing fatal. She needed rest and fast. "Hang on," he said softly. She looked at him, small but alert. Somehow, this fragile creature carried the weight of her own survival, sharper than most adults he had met. Corvin leaned back, letting the hum of the jump drive fill the silence. For the first time in a long while, he felt something other than solitude, responsibility, maybe even hope. This child, this hybrid miracle, depended on him, and he would not fail. The jump ended. The star nomad emerged into the vast emptiness of uncharted space. Corvin plotted a course to the nearest neutral system. Every instinct screamed danger, but he would get her somewhere safe. Somewhere they could think, plan, and heal. The child's golden eyes met his. No words were needed. They were partners now, bound by survival, trust, and a secret that could shake the galaxy. And somewhere out there, the hunters were already closing in. The pursuit begins. Corvin Drake gripped the controls of the star nomad as the stars stretched into lines outside the viewport. Lyria, the strange hybrid child, sat quietly beside him, her golden eyes scanning the sensors and controls with uncanny focus. Her small claws tapped lightly against the console, a subtle rhythm that somehow seemed like a heartbeat of determination. Corvin frowned at the scanner. 3 military-grade ships were closing fast. They weren't just ordinary warships. They belonged to 2 rival clans, the Vulerin and the Turo Concordat. Both had long memories, long grudges, and now they wanted Lyria dead. And he was with her. "Stay calm," he muttered under his breath, eyes scanning the debris ahead. "We need to make it out of this debris field first." Lyria didn't speak, but her ears twitched in response. Her instincts were sharp. She understood the danger. She had survived far worse than any human child. Corvin had noticed how she read his every movement, how she reacted before he even thought about it. Somehow, he trusted her judgment already. The star nomad wove through tumbling hulls and broken satellites. Metal scraped metal as he nudged the ship through impossibly narrow gaps. Behind them, the pursuing ships adjusted their course, sensors sweeping for any sign of movement. Corvin cursed. The nomad wasn't built for combat or speed, just for salvaging and evasion. But he had something those military pilots didn't: knowledge of chaos. He could predict how debris would move, how gravity fields would pull fragments, how scanners could be fooled by shadows. The first enemy ship tried to flank him. Corvin twisted the controls, dodging a falling hull panel. Sparks flew as it grazed the nomad's hull. Lyria's ears flattened, her tail brushing against the console. She pressed a small paw against his arm. He glanced at her. "I've got this," he said, but she wasn't reassured. She never was. Not fully. She had learned too early that trust was fragile. Another ship fired. Plasma bolts scorched the vacuum around them, lighting up the debris like fireworks gone wrong. Corvin rolled the nomad, ducking behind a massive chunk of station debris. Lyria gripped the seat, her breathing fast but steady. Even small, she was deadly aware of danger. Corvin knew she would survive this no matter what. 3 minutes, he muttered, checking the distance. "That's all we've got before they close the net." He tapped a sequence into the jump drive, calculating a blind jump into uncharted space. Risky, yes, but better than waiting for the inevitable. Lyria tilted her head. She didn't need to ask what he was planning. Corvin had learned one thing already. She didn't need words to communicate. Every gesture, every glance was enough. She leaned forward, paw hovering over the small control panel he had left unlocked for her. She wasn't going to interfere. She was reading the course, analyzing it, judging it. "Good girl," he whispered. Not praise, just acknowledgement. A warning alarm blared. The tracker on the Nomad's hull pulsed red. Quantum entanglement. It was impossible to hide from now. Every ship in the sector, every warband, could locate them instantly. Corvin's stomach tightened. They were running not just from 3 ships, they were running from hundreds. He pushed the throttle forward, guiding the Nomad through a twisting canyon of debris. Sparks flew as the hull scraped, alarms blaring with every minor collision. Behind them, one pursuing ship collided with a satellite. Hull breach confirmed. The second ship adjusted its sensors. Corvin grinned, a mix of relief and fear. They were alive, but only barely. Suddenly, Lyria's paw shot out. She pressed a button he hadn't seen, and the ship shuddered. A small, temporary shield blinked to life around the hull, dispersing the last plasma bolts from the nearest pursuer. Corvin blinked. "Where did you learn that?" he asked quietly. She shrugged, ears twitching. Her golden eyes sparkled with mischief or maybe calculation. Either way, she had saved them. Again. The last ship continued pursuit, its sensors sharper, more aggressive. Corvin knew this would not end in simple maneuvering. They would need to jump soon. Blind jumps were dangerous, but staying in the debris field any longer was suicidal. "Ready for a blind jump?" he asked. Lyria leaned forward, her paw brushing his arm in acknowledgement. Not fear, not hesitation. A decision. He activated the jump drive. The stars stretched into lines, the Nomad shuddering as it left the debris field behind. For a moment silence fell. Corvin exhaled slowly. Lyria slumped in her seat, small and exhausted, but alive. They emerged into empty space. Corvin scanned the area. No warships in sight. Temporary freedom. He let himself relax for a moment, running a medical scan on Lyria. Broken ribs, bruises, minor radiation exposure. Nothing fatal. But she needed rest and fast. He set the ship's autopilot on course for the nearest neutral system, a safe haven, or at least somewhere to think. "Hang on," he whispered, glancing at her. "We're not safe yet. Not even close." She looked up at him, eyes wide. Silent understanding passed between them. She had survived death before, and she would survive it again. But she wasn't just surviving. She was watching, learning, calculating. The galaxy had made her a target, but she was no ordinary prey. She was sharp, cunning, and deadly in her own right. Corvin tapped the communications console, checking for any signals. None. Not yet. But he knew it was only a matter of time before the tracker betrayed their location again. Lyria tilted her head, her small claws brushing over the controls. Somehow she already knew what to do. "Don't worry," he muttered. "We'll get you somewhere safe." And for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to hope. But hope in a galaxy that hunted the innocent was fragile, and Corvin knew their reprieve would be short. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, full of both danger and possibility. And inside the Star Nomad, a man and a child, one human, one hybrid, prepared to face a galaxy that had already decided they must die. The quantum tracker. Corvin Drake leaned back in the pilot seat of the Star Nomad, his hands still gripping the controls. Outside, the stars stretched into long streaks from the faster-than-light jump, a blur of light and hope. Lyria, the hybrid child with golden eyes and retractable claws, was quiet, curled in the co-pilot seat. Her sharp ears twitched constantly, picking up sounds even Corvin couldn't hear. The temporary silence of space was a relief, but it didn't last. His scanner beeped. Corvin froze. A signal pulsed faintly on the ship's hull. He frowned. This wasn't from the pursuing warships, they were gone, at least for now. But something else had attached itself to the Nomad. He swore under his breath. A small device, glowing with a soft blue pulse, clung to the hull of the ship. Quantum entangled. Corvin's stomach dropped. That meant it could transmit their location across the entire sector in real time. No jamming, no hiding. Every Vulerin and Turo warband in range would know exactly where they were. Lyria stirred. Her small paw reached out to touch the device, claws extended. She looked at him, her golden eyes wide but calm. "Don't," Corvin warned. She froze, ears flattening. Somehow she understood. She had been in situations like this before. This was more than survival instinct, it was intelligence beyond her years. Corvin tapped the console. The tracker was sophisticated, broadcasting their position and even their speed, trajectory, and energy signature. If they stayed on course, hundreds of ships would converge on them in hours, maybe minutes. "Looks like we're famous now," he muttered. Lyria blinked at him, unamused, as if to say, "This isn't funny." He ran calculations. The jump into uncharted space had bought them minutes, maybe an hour. That was enough to plan, to figure out their next move. But removing the tracker? Impossible. It was quantum entangled to explode if tampered with incorrectly. Even touching it wrong could destroy the ship and both of them instantly. Corvin exhaled slowly, rubbing his face through the helmet. "Okay, kid. Looks like we're in this together." Lyria responded with a small tilt of her head, golden eyes glinting in the low light. She trusted him, and he had no choice but to trust her. The scanner beeped again, showing 3 more contacts on the edge of the system. More warships, faster and heavier armed than the first group. Corvin cursed. The tracker wasn't just marking them for these ships. It was calling in every hunter in the galaxy. Hundreds, maybe thousands, would know where to find them. "Looks like the galaxy really wants to kill us," he muttered. Lyria's ears twitched in response. She leaned forward, placing her small paw on the navigation panel, almost as if guiding him. Corvin smiled faintly. She was brilliant. Even without words, she communicated danger, routes, and possibilities better than any star map he had ever studied. They needed a plan. Corvin considered every option. Fight? No. The Nomad wasn't a warship. Hide? Impossible. Every warship in the sector had their location. Their only option was speed, agility, and deception. He guided the Nomad toward a dense asteroid belt on the edge of the sector. Debris and gravity wells could hide them, at least temporarily. He ran simulations in his head. Sharp turns, sudden drops, using the moving asteroids to confuse scanners. It was risky, but the alternative was certain death. Lyria crouched, her small body tense. She pointed toward a large asteroid ahead, then made a slicing motion across her throat. Corvin nodded. She was warning him. That path would be a trap. Another asteroid to the left, she indicated. Safe. Her instincts were perfect. They dove into the asteroid field, weaving between massive chunks of rock and debris. The trackers on the warships were relentless, pulsing constantly, but the Nomad slipped through shadows, close gaps, and hidden sensor shadows. Corvin gritted his teeth as metal scraped against metal. Sparks flew across the hull, but the ship held. From the co-pilot seat, Lyria's small hands moved over the displays. She wasn't just helping. She was calculating, predicting, guiding. Corvin realized she wasn't a passenger. She was a partner, capable of decisions that could save or doom them. Her golden eyes glinted with fierce intelligence. Behind them, the warships tried to follow. One ship miscalculated the asteroid movement and smashed against a debris cluster. Corvin ducked the Nomad behind a floating station fragment, letting the pursuing sensors lose track. The tracker on the hull, glowing ominously, pulsed faster. It was only a matter of time before it drew more attention. "We need somewhere to hide," he said. "Somewhere neutral. Maybe a station that won't report us immediately." Lyria's ears twitched. She tapped the console, selecting a nearby uninhabited moon. Small, quiet, unmonitored. Perfect. She leaned back, letting him guide the Nomad toward the landing point. Corvin exhaled. They had bought themselves time, but he knew it wouldn't last. The child shifted slightly, placing a paw on his arm. It was a gesture of reassurance. She wasn't just following him. She was telling him that they would survive. Together, he felt a surge of determination. Whoever had hunted her this far would not catch them easily. Not if he could help it. Corvin plotted the approach to the moon carefully, scanning for hidden dangers. Debris from destroyed ships, rogue satellites, and stray debris filled the space around them. Each one could be used to their advantage or be the end of them. He guided the Nomad with precision, Lyria's silent guidance aiding him every step. They landed on the small moon's surface, rolling the Nomad to a stop in a natural crater. Corvin shut down the engines and exhaled, letting himself relax slightly. Lyria curled in the seat beside him, exhausted but alert. Her golden eyes scanned the horizon, every movement controlled and careful. Corvin looked at her. "We've survived this far," he said. "But the tracker, it won't stop. We need to find a way to disable it eventually, or we'll never be safe." She blinked at him, her ears twitching. No words, but he understood. She knew. Somehow she always knew, and that knowledge made her dangerous and brilliant. For now, though, they had a moment of quiet. Corvin ran medical scans on Lyria, checked the ship, and mapped out the next jumps. Every system, every movement had to be calculated. One mistake and the galaxy would catch up with them. But for a brief, precious moment, they were alive. And alive was all that mattered. The first ambush. Corvin Drake stepped out of the Star Nomad, boots sinking slightly into the dusty moon's surface. The sky above was black and silent, broken only by distant stars. The crater they had landed in gave them some cover, but he knew it wouldn't hide them for long. The quantum tracker pulsing on the hull ensured that hunters from across the galaxy were already speeding in their direction. Lyria followed him, her small steps silent. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. Corvin watched her ears twitch, scanning the environment. She was nervous, but not afraid. Fear was something she had learned to lock away long ago. Corvin walked around the Nomad, inspecting the hull. The tracker blinked with a cold blue light, slow, steady, deadly. It was attached like a metal parasite, designed to explode the moment anyone tried to remove it. "Why did they put this on you?" Corvin whispered. Lyria tilted her head but stayed quiet. He wished she could speak, but he had learned that her silence carried meaning. She remembered everything, every chase, every betrayal, every escape, and she understood more than she could express. "We need to move fast," Corvin muttered. Inside the cockpit, he scanned nearby space. One red dot appeared, then another, then 3 more. Warships, closing in fast. "Damn! They're early." Corvin slammed his fist lightly against the console. He had expected at least an hour. They barely got 10 minutes of peace. Lyria froze, her ears rising sharply. She sensed something before Corvin did. She grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength and pointed toward a ridge above the crater. Corvin narrowed his eyes. First, he saw nothing. Then he noticed a faint shimmer like heat waves. Cloaking technology. "Snipers," he whispered. He grabbed Lyria around the waist and pulled her down behind a rock, just as a plasma round sizzled past them, melting a hole into the ground. Lyria hissed softly, a low sound no human child could ever make. Corvin peeked over the rock. 3 figures decloaked on the ridge. Tall, armored warriors with glowing visors, the Turo hunters, famous for 2 things: never missing their target and never leaving survivors. The leader raised his weapon again. Corvin ducked. "We can't fight them head-on," he muttered. "But maybe." He switched on the Nomad's external systems remotely. One function still worked in low-power mode, the distress strobe. A sudden flash of bright white light exploded across the crater, blinding the Turo hunters for a few seconds. Corvin grabbed Lyria's hand. "Run!" They sprinted along the rocky wall of the crater, ducking behind jagged formations. Plasma bolts rained down behind them, melting rock and sending dust clouds into the air. Lyria moved fast, faster than any child should. Her instincts guided her through the uneven terrain. But the Turo were recovering quickly. Their visors brightened as they switched to thermal vision. They could track heat signatures now. Corvin cursed. "They can see us." Lyria tugged his arm and pointed toward a narrow fissure in the crater wall, a crack barely wide enough for a grown man to squeeze through. "You want to hide in there?" Corvin asked. Lyria nodded. He didn't have time to think. Plasma blasts hit the ground around them. Dust filled the air. Corvin lifted Lyria and squeezed through the fissure. The gap led into a narrow cave, just big enough for them to crawl inside. The hunter's footsteps approached. Heavy, metallic, echoing. Corvin held Lyria close. The child's heartbeat was fast, but she didn't panic. Instead, her ears angled toward the hunters outside, tracking their movement with perfect precision. Through the crack, Corvin saw shadows sliding across the crater floor. The Turo scanned the rocks, methodical and silent. One hunter stopped right next to the fissure. Corvin held his breath. Even Lyria didn't move. The hunter aimed his weapon at the crack. Then something else appeared in the sky. A massive shadow passed overhead. Engines growled like thunder. Lights swept across the surface of the moon. Corvin's blood froze. Another group had arrived. This time it wasn't the Turo. It was the Vulerin, the cruelest warrior race in the sector. Their ships descended like giant steel predators. One landed only a few hundred meters away, kicking up clouds of dust. Warriors in black armor marched out, carrying heavy rifles. The Turo hunters turned their visors toward the new arrivals. The two groups locked onto each other in a silent, deadly standoff. Corvin felt hope and fear mix inside him. If the two clans fought, it could give him a chance to escape. The air cracked with a thunderous shout. A Vulerin captain stepped forward, his armor marked with red patterns. "The child is ours," he roared. The Turo leader responded in a calm, cold voice. "She is marked for execution by the Turo Concordat. Stand aside." A long silence followed. Then everything exploded. Plasma fire lit up the crater. Rocks shattered. Cloaked mines detonated. Warriors leaped behind cover, firing shot after shot. The ground shook beneath Corvin and Lyria as two of the deadliest armies in the galaxy battled only meters away. Corvin knew this was his only chance. "Lyria," he whispered. "We have to get back to the ship." She nodded firmly and crawled deeper into the cave. There was another exit, a small tunnel leading behind the crater. Lyria had noticed it earlier. Corvin smiled faintly. "Smart kid." They crawled through the tight space as the battle outside intensified. Plasma grenades exploded, sending shockwaves through the cave walls. Dust rained down on them. Corvin shielded Lyria with his body as they pushed through the narrow tunnel. Finally, they reached the other side. The Star Nomad was just ahead, hidden from the main battle by a wall of rock. Smoke rose in the distance. Screams echoed across the crater. Corvin lifted Lyria. "Hold on tight." They sprinted to the ship. Plasma bolts flew overhead as some of the Vulerin spotted movement. Corvin dove inside, sealing the hatch. The engines roared to life. "Come on, Nomad. Don't fail me now." Lyria sat beside him, gripping the seat tightly. Corvin punched the thrusters. The Nomad lifted off just as plasma fire struck the ground where they had been standing. The ship shot upward, leaving the crater behind. Below them, the Turo and Vulerin tore each other apart. But both sides still wanted one thing: Lyria, and they would not stop. Corvin gritted his teeth as the ship cleared the moon's atmosphere. "Kid," he said breathlessly, "that was our first ambush." Lyria's golden eyes met his. She understood one thing clearly: more were coming. The secret of Lyria. The Star Nomad sped away from the moon, engines glowing bright blue as Corvin pushed them harder than they were meant to go. He didn't care if the ship overheated. He didn't care if parts shook loose. Only one thing mattered: getting Lyria away from the battlefield before either warrior clan regrouped. Lyria sat quietly in the co-pilot seat, her small hands gripping the armrests. She wasn't crying. She wasn't trembling. She simply watched the stars with sharp golden eyes, as if she was studying every flicker of light. Corvin took a slow breath. "We need answers, kid," he said softly. "The whole galaxy is trying to kill you, and we can't keep running without knowing why." Lyria didn't respond. She rarely did with words. But she leaned forward slightly, ears twitching, sensing something in his tone. Corvin turned on the ship's medical scanner. "Let's start with your scans," he said. "Maybe there's something special about you, something they want." He tapped the controls. A soft blue light swept across the cabin, passing over Lyria's body. Corvin watched the medical screen carefully. The results appeared slowly, line by line. His eyes widened. What is this? Lyria glanced at him, her expression unreadable. Corvin stared at the screen again. Her bones, part organic, part metallic. Her blood, carrying particles he had never seen before. Her heart, dual-chambered, pulsing with incredible strength. And in her chest, pulsing with faint energy, something like a tiny star map. He whispered, "You're not just a hybrid. You're something created." Lyria lowered her head, as if she understood what he saw. Then Corvin noticed something else. A symbol, burned faintly into the tissue near her heart. A small circle with 4 lines drawn out like wings. He leaned closer. That mark, I know it. He had seen it once before. Years ago on a research station. A secret project whispered about between scientists. Project that was shut down, destroyed, erased from records. Project Echoborn. A rumor, a myth. The idea of creating a child who could survive any planet, understand any language, adapt to any danger. A child who could grow into something more. Corvin stepped back, stunned. "You're one of them," he whispered. "You're an echo child." Lyria's ears twitched, and her eyes softened. She reached out and gently touched his arm. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was a silent plea. "Please don't treat me differently." Corvin swallowed. "If this is true, that means the galaxy doesn't want to kill you." He paused. "They want to control you." Lyria blinked slowly. She understood more than any ordinary child could. Corvin turned off the scanner. "Okay, so now we know why they're hunting you. But that still means we need to stay ahead of them." He glanced at the navigation screen. The warships from both clans were spreading out, searching for their signal. The quantum tracker still blinked on the hull, sending out their location like a beacon. "We need to get this thing off before they catch us again," he muttered. Lyria suddenly straightened. Her ears focused on something outside the ship. Corvin checked the sensors and his stomach dropped. 2 ships were closing in fast, coming in from opposite sides. They weren't large warships. They were small, agile craft scouts. "They found us already?" he whispered. He pulled the Nomad hard to the right. The scout ships fired blue pulses that crackled across space like lightning. One hit the rear thruster. The ship shook violently. Corvin clenched his teeth. "Hang on!" Lyria gripped her seat tightly. Her tail flicked with instinctive fear as the ship spun through space. Corvin fought the controls, pulling the Nomad out of a chaotic tumble. The scouts circled around again. Corvin's mind raced. The Nomad couldn't withstand another attack. They needed something clever, something unexpected. Then he remembered something Lyria had done before. He glanced at her. "Remember the shield from before? Can you do it again?" Lyria blinked, then nodded. She leaned forward, tapping the panel with precise movements. Her claws clicked against buttons as if she had used this ship all her life. The Nomad's emergency shield flickered to life. A thin, shimmering layer barely strong enough to stop debris, but maybe enough for one hit. Corvin angled the ship toward the nearest asteroid ring. "We're going into that field." The scouts followed, firing more pulses. The shield absorbed the first hit, glowing brightly. The second hit broke through, shaking the Nomad so hard Corvin nearly lost control. But they made it into the asteroid field. Huge rocks drifted around them, some the size of cities, others small as meteors. The scouts tried to follow, but they had to slow down or risk smashing into the debris. Corvin breathed out in relief. "That buys us a few minutes." Lyria suddenly climbed out of her seat and touched the window, staring at a giant asteroid ahead. It wasn't like the others. It had a hollow opening, glowing faintly with energy. Corvin narrowed his eyes. "What is that?" The sensors read something unusual, strange energy signatures inside the rock, like an ancient structure buried within. And then Corvin saw the same winged circle symbol glowing faintly on the rock's surface. The same symbol Lyria had on her chest. He felt his heart stop. "This asteroid, it's connected to you." Lyria looked back at him, eyes full of quiet sorrow and understanding. She wasn't just created. She had a purpose. Corvin guided the nomad toward the glowing entrance. The inside appeared vast, like a hollow world carved out by something intelligent. Soft lights flickered to life as they entered, as if recognizing Lyria's presence. Corvin whispered, "It's calling to you." Lyria placed her small hand on the glass. A single tear slid down her cheek. Whatever secret she carried, whatever she truly was, this place knew the truth. And soon Corvin would too. The broken signal. The star nomad streaked through deep space, engines glowing faintly blue as Corvin Drake pushed the ship as far from the moon battlefield as possible. The cabin was dim, quiet except for the low hum of the reactor and the distant crackle of damaged circuits. Lyria sat curled in the co-pilot seat, her tail wrapped around her legs, her golden eyes fixed on the sensor display. They had survived another attack, but Corvin knew the danger wasn't over. As long as the quantum tracker pulsed on the hull, every hunter in the galaxy could find them. Corvin exhaled slowly. That ambush wasn't random. Someone knew exactly where we were. Lyria tilted her head. Her ears twitched at the sound of his voice. She understood more than she showed. Corvin tapped the console. The tracker's signal was stronger now, its pulses almost angry. It sounded like a slow heartbeat, echoing through the ship. Ping, ping, ping. Every ping was a message to the galaxy. They are here. Come kill them. We need to break this signal, Corvin said. Or we're dead. Lyria hopped from her seat and moved toward the rear of the cockpit. Corvin followed her. She led him to a small storage compartment under the floor. With surprising strength, she pushed it open. Inside were wires, old tools, and a device Corvin had forgotten he even stored there, a signal disruptor. "How did you?" he whispered. She had never seen the compartment before, but she found exactly what they needed. Lyria didn't answer. Instead, she handed the disruptor to him. Corvin smiled slightly. "You're full of surprises." He returned to the console. The disruptor wasn't strong enough to destroy a quantum tracker, but maybe it could weaken the pulse. He connected the device to the Nomad's main systems. Lights flickered, engines strained. Lyria steadied herself as the ship shook. The disruptor whined, overheating almost instantly. Come on, Corvin muttered. The tracker beeped faster, as if responding to the disruptor's attempt to interfere. Ping, 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 ping. Corvin gritted his teeth and lowered the disruptor's frequency. The sound dropped to a lower pitch. A spark flew from a cable. Smoke rose from the console. The tracker's pulse slowed. Lyria leaned close, her golden eyes studying the waveforms. She reached out and pressed a tiny button on the disruptor. Corvin didn't even know it had that button. The pulse stabilized, then weakened. Ping, ping. Corvin's eyes widened. You did it. You actually did it. For the first time in hours, he felt hope. But then the alarm blared. Corvin spun toward the sensor display. 3 ships. No, 5. Then 10. All emerging from FTL jump, surrounding the Nomad like a tightening net. Corvin's heart sank. Lyria's ears flattened. He checked the tracker. The pulse had weakened but not broken. They weren't broadcasting their exact location anymore, but they were close enough for hunters to pick up the general sector. And someone had already found them. Corvin's voice dropped. We're not alone. Outside the viewport, small fighter ships with black armor markings approached. These weren't Turo or Vulerin. These were worse. The Shadow Syndicate, hunters who didn't follow rules, didn't care about clans or wars. They hunted for money, and someone had put a heavy bounty on Lyria's life. Corvin hit the thrusters. The Nomad turned sharply, dipping between 2 enemy ships. Plasma bolts streaked past the windows, illuminating the cabin with flashes of blue and white. Hold on, Corvin shouted. Lyria gripped the seat, her claws digging into the cushion. The Nomad dove downward, avoiding another barrage of fire. But the Shadow Syndicate fighters were fast, too fast. They closed in within seconds. Corvin flipped a switch, activating evasive pattern Delta 6. The Nomad spun in unpredictable zigzags. But damage alarms screamed as a plasma bolt clipped the left wing. Something exploded behind them. Sparks showered the cockpit. Lyria fell back but quickly climbed to her seat. She placed her small hand on the navigation controls. "Not this time," Corvin said. "The ship's too damaged for sharp moves." She ignored him. Her fingers moved across the console with swift, precise motions. Corvin watched in confusion. She was inputting a code, a long sequence of symbols and numbers. "Where did you learn that?" he whispered. She didn't look at him. The navigation screen flickered, then shifted to a map Corvin had never seen. An unknown region of space. A hidden zone. A place erased from all public star charts. Lyria pointed to a glowing point at the center of the void. "You want to go there?" Corvin asked. She nodded. "But we don't know what's in that region. Could be a black hole. Pirate nest. A dead system." Her eyes didn't move. She was sure. She wanted to go there. No, she needed to go there. Corvin swallowed hard. "Fine. If that's our best chance." He locked the coordinates. The Nomad shook under another blast. Warning lights flashed red. One engine was about to fail. Corvin slammed his hand onto the jump drive lever. Jumping! The stars stretched. The ship roared. Enemy fighters vanished behind them as the Nomad shot into the unknown region. Inside the cockpit, Lyria pressed herself against the seat, her eyes glowing brighter than ever, almost shining. Corvin noticed. Something was happening to her. Something he didn't understand. But before he could ask, the ship jolted violently. Alarms screamed. The Nomad flew out of hyperspace and into a strange, silent system with no stars, no planets, no light, only darkness. And in the center of that darkness floated something enormous. A space structure bigger than any station Corvin had ever seen. Ancient, broken, dead. Lyria whispered her first word since he found her. Soft and shaky. "Home." Corvin froze. "What did you say?" She stared at the giant structure. "Home," she repeated. Her voice trembled. The truth hit Corvin like cold steel. This wasn't a random location. This was her origin. And whatever happened next would change everything. The last stand. The alarm lights flashed across the silent harbor base as Finn followed Dr. Morella and Lyra into the deepest area of the facility. Every hallway felt like a countdown. Every ceiling speaker carried distant echoes of approaching ships. Something big was happening above them. The ground shook gently under Finn's boots. "They're coming, aren't they?" he asked. Dr. Morella nodded. "Every warrior clan. Both sides. The beacon broadcast your location the moment you entered orbit." Lyra clung to Finn's sleeve, her ears folded flat. She could hear the engines in the sky. Engines Finn could not even imagine. Dr. Morella placed a hand on a locked door. "But this time, they will not take her." The door slid open. Inside was a circular chamber filled with a soft blue glow. Strange machines lined the walls, tall, curved structures that hummed with energy. In the center stood a platform shaped like a ring. Finn stepped forward. "What is this?" "A shield generator," Morella said. "A prototype built by Lyra's parents before the treaty killed their dream. It can protect this whole moon for 10 minutes. No ship can break through." "Only 10?" Finn asked. "Yes," she said quietly. 10 minutes. That is all they could design before they died. Finn looked at Lyra. Her small hand tightened around his. "And then what happens?" he asked. Morella swallowed. "Then the device burns out forever. When that happens, every warrior ship outside will launch a ground assault. Hundreds of warriors. Thousands." Finn's jaw clenched. "So this is a dead end." "No," Morella said. "This is where the truth comes out." She activated the main console. A projection appeared, records, files, secret transmissions. Lyra's parents. Their research. Their peace mission. Everything both sides wanted to hide. "They died trying to end the war," Morella said. "And you, Finn, you're the first outsider brave enough to protect their child." Another tremor hit the moon. Harder this time. Dust drifted from the ceiling. "They're landing," Finn said. Morella nodded. "We must send the message before they breach the shield. If the galaxy sees the truth, The clans will no longer be able to lie. She looked at Lyra. You, child, must decide. Lyra stepped onto the platform. Her golden eyes reflected the glowing blue light. She raised both hands and touched the main console with her claws. The machines reacted instantly, reading her hybrid DNA. She was the bridge. A surge of energy filled the room. Screens flickered. The chamber vibrated. Transmission starting, Morella said. She's unlocking the last files of her parents. Then, boom, the entire facility shook violently. Shield activated, Morella announced. We have 10 minutes. Finn cursed. Then let's make them count. He grabbed his rifle and took position near the door as Lyra continued the activation. Finn's heart pounded. He could hear distant explosions outside, ships firing at the shield, trying to force their way in. What happens when the shield falls? He asked. Morella didn't answer. She didn't need to. Lyra suddenly cried out. The lights around her changed color, blue to bright gold. The air crackled with electricity. She's opening the archive, Morella said. This is the moment her parents died for. The hologram shifted, showing Lyra's mother and father in their last message. If you are seeing this, her mother said, then our child lives. Lyra stepped closer, tears forming in her eyes. Her father continued, to the clans who hunt her, we forgive you, but we will not let you bury the truth. Our child is the future you fear, a future without war. Finn felt something sharp in his chest, a mix of anger and admiration. These two had died trying to end a century of hate. Boom! The base trembled again. Morella checked the timer. 7 minutes left. The hologram shifted again, this time showing war plans, secret agreements, hidden attacks both clans had blamed on the other. The truth was explosive. This will expose everything, Finn said softly. That is the point, Morella replied. The ground shook even harder. This time the lights flickered. They're trying to overload the shield, Finn said. They won't stop, Morella replied. To them, Lyra is a crime, a reminder of peace they rejected. Finn raised his rifle. Then they'll have to go through me. Lyra looked back at him, eyes shining with trust. Another huge impact rocked the facility. 5 minutes, Morella said. Finn, get ready. Finn took a deep breath and aimed at the entrance. The metal doors bulged inward as something massive slammed into them. Finn tightened his grip. Come on, he muttered. I'm right here. The door buckled, but then the console beeped. Morella's eyes widened. The data, it's uploaded. The entire galaxy is receiving it right now. Every channel, every frequency, every world. The truth was out. Lyra's parents had won. But the shield began to flicker. Oh no, Morella whispered. The shield is collapsing early. The doors dented again, deeply. Finn, she said, voice trembling. You must take Lyra and run. There is an escape tunnel behind the wall. And you? Finn asked. I stay, Morella said. If they capture me, the transmission dies. Someone must hold them here. Finn shook his head. No! Suddenly Lyra grabbed his hand. She pulled him toward the hidden door. Her small voice, for the first time, whispered a single word. Please. Finn froze. She could speak. She was begging him. He nodded and opened the escape hatch. Morella smiled at them, gentle and proud. Go. Her future starts now. Another explosion shattered the entrance. Warriors roared from outside. Finn carried Lyra into the tunnel as the noise behind them grew louder. Hot air blasted through the passage as the shield finally died. Lyra buried her face in Finn's shoulder. He kept running. He didn't look back. The tunnel led them to the surface, where the Nomad waited, its engines glowing, ready to fly. Finn strapped Lyra into the seat. We're not done, he told her. But we're not giving up. Above them, dozens of warships hovered over Vestra 7. But something strange was happening. They weren't firing. They were retreating, confused, afraid. The truth had changed everything. Finn launched the Nomad into the sky. As they rose, Lyra rested her head against his arm. She looked tired, but safe. Where do we go now? Finn asked softly. Lyra pointed at the stars, toward the unknown. A new future, their future, and Finn smiled. All right, kid, let's see what destiny has planned for us. The Nomad jumped into FTL, leaving the war behind and carrying hope into the next dawn.